Okay, buenos dias. It's fantastic to be in Mexico and to spend some time exploring the future of health and medicine. I first came to Mexico as a medical student with Los Médicos Voladores, and I've always loved the energy, the ideas, the innovation that's happening in Mexico. And many of the ideas that we've been sharing here over the last couple of days have been really changing the world. It's been disrupting entire industries, from how we do our banking to how we get our entertainment. And of course, our world's been sadly disrupted in the last 2 years by the terrible pandemic. And the pandemic is not over, but it's been teaching us some lessons. It's shown us that while many fields have reached the fourth industrial age, health and medicine is still stuck in the second or the third industrial age. And it's giving us an opportunity to hopefully transform not just healthcare, but many other elements. It's been our sort of chief transformation officer. And I'm an optimist. I'd like to think that many of the challenges of the pandemic and the solutions that we've generated will bring us more health and longer lives than the pandemic has taken. So just like Sputnik sparked off the space age, COVID is sparking a bit of a new health age. And it's bringing us to this new future. What do you think about when you think about the future of medicine? Do you think about the four walls of a hospital? Because we're going from hospital increasingly to homespital. We're shifting where care happens. We're going from research, from lab to laptop. You've heard a lot about the incredible innovation from mRNA vaccines that have come so quickly to help us and saving millions of lives for pandemics and in the future for cancer, Alzheimer's, and beyond. So many things are accelerating and shifting in this new age. But we're still in 2022, and sometimes it feels a little bit like we're back to the future. When I go visit Mass General Hospital at Harvard, where I did my medical training 20 years ago, when I visit the hospital where I was a young doctor, it's pretty much unchanged in 20 years. We're still using fax machines to communicate and paper forms. I had my own cardiac study done last month at Stanford University. I only got my results on a CD-ROM. I don't even own a CD-ROM player anymore. So we're sometimes stuck in our old methods, our old mindsets, in waiting rooms and ways of defining healthcare and other industries in old silos, based on body parts, when today, as you've heard, we're in this genomic, connected, exponential age. So how do we take ourselves forward with new ideas and mindsets? Part of it, as Tiffany just mentioned, is to shift our mindset from one of sick care to one of health care. What do I mean by sick care? Sick care is how we've practiced medicine for thousands of years, very intermittent and episodic data that we only collect in the four walls of the clinic or the hospital or the intensive care unit. And that leads to our very reactive mindset. We tend to wait for the patient to show up with a heart attack or a stroke or diabetes, or in my field of oncology, a late-stage cancer, or we wait for the pandemic to arrive. So the future is not to be intermittent and reactive, but continuous with all these new forms of data that could be much more personalized, much more proactive, and start to bring care literally anywhere, anytime, with much lower cost and better outcomes, from rural Mexico to rural California and beyond. So this gives us the opportunity to move the needle, not just for treating disease, but even, as Tiffany mentioned, for optimizing health span and wellness, not to live to 120, no one wants to be 120 and feel 120, but to improve our health span and to start to use some of these new technologies to maybe even stop and reverse aging. So today I'm going to very quickly try and talk about what we can do today and what you can do in the future to optimize health and prevention, early diagnostics, therapies, which might be a digital app, not a drug or a device, and how we can all catalyze discovery together. So the future of medicine, it's on all our minds. I was lucky to write the opening article for National Geographic 2 years ago. And it's not about any innovation or even 12 innovations. It's about how many of these exponential technologies are coming together to shape our world. You heard from Pascal yesterday about the power of exponential technology. That's where the stress and disruption occurs. And we've seen Moore's law, power our computers in our pockets. I still have my old antique, iPhone 2. It still works. 10 years ago, it was amazing. Now it feels slow and clunky. And soon we'll have quantum computing, maybe even embedded in our mobile devices. And so our magical medicalized smartphones are creating incredible opportunities to democratize how and where we do care. Soon they'll dissolve into our eyeglasses, or they'll dissolve into our next generation contact lenses, which will give us health and other information on the go. The sensors that we already have in our mobile technologies are really shifting how we can do diagnostics and therapy. You can diagnose your child's ear infection. You can diagnose a wound using artificial intelligence and our smart cameras. You can even have a medical selfie. Instead of bringing your urine to the laboratory if you might have a urinary tract infection or you're pregnant or might have risk of kidney disease, you can just dip your urine dipstick at home, use the smart camera, it analyzes it right away and sends that to your doctor or pharmacist immediately. So instantaneously making a diagnosis. So what used to fit on a desktop in 2000 now fits on our FDA-cleared medicalized smartwatches. And this is bringing us to this new era of digital connected healthcare. Technologies that used to be, big and expensive are now dematerialized. They're almost free and can be democratized around the planet. And gives us all this ability to imagine and reimagine healthcare across the continuum, not just in 2022, but into 2026 and 2032 and beyond. So the last 10 years were pretty amazing, but as Bill Gates said, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in the next 10 years. And I think the next 10 years will make the last 10 years look slow. There's Moore's law, there's also Amar's law. We tend to overestimate what will happen in the next 2 or 3 years, but overestimate the next decade. And I think with all of our imagination and collaboration here, we can really accelerate a better health and future for all of us. But it's not just about technology, it's also sometimes about getting out of our old mindsets. The difficulty lies not in the new ideas, but in escaping from the old ones. So what old ideas might be holding you or your colleagues or your healthcare systems back here in Mexico and beyond? Some of the new ideas and technologies we have, of course, are not just our Internet of Things, but our Internet of Medical Things, riding 5G, soon 6G, trillions of devices that can create terabytes of data. The problem is that data is often very siloed. It doesn't talk to each other. Sometimes we have good data or even bad data. We have an infodemic of information. And the opportunity is to not just have data. So what if you have data? Data might be the new oil, but what we really want is the new insights that's personal to us, our communities, our healthcare systems, actionable information that we can use at the bedside or at the website. And to narrow that gap, which is often 17 years from publication to knowledge, to what we can use today, yourself as a consumer or your doctor or healthcare system. And with all that data, to provide new ways to keep it safe and private using Bitcoin, blockchain technologies, and beyond. Now, of course, technology doesn't live by itself. We need to align the incentives. We spend most of our dollars on the sick care side. We're starting to reward prevention. The new outcomes are the new incomes. If you start to reward people staying healthy and new innovations in that direction, that can move the needle. Some of the incentives are to change where healthcare happens, from hospital to home, to our phone, to on, and even inside our bodies, or to the corner pharmacy, which has increasingly become a place where we can get health, medicine, and treatment, or to your telemedicine app. So this new world of mobile, connected, digital health, I think someone will just call it health, gives us the opportunity to connect the dots between the data and make it highly personal and actionable. 10 years ago, I gave a TED Talk, The Future of Medicine. There's an app for that. There were about 25,000 apps 10 years ago. Now there's over 350,000 apps. We don't want 300,000 apps. We need one or two that integrate and make sense to each of us in a personalized way. And so this digital world isn't about apps or wearables or devices. It's how we put this all together and layer it with all these other exponential technologies, AI, robotics, 3D printing, nanotech, genomics, getting faster, better, cheaper, super converging, and giving us the opportunity to solve for the pain points that we have in health and medicine. All these fields in the middle here didn't exist when I was a Stanford medical student, from robotic surgery to digital therapeutics to AI and drug discovery. And so that gives all of us now new tools to address the challenges of healthcare in Mexico and around the world, from older populations to too much data, and how we also help our healthcare systems and our regulators bring these technologies forward. So through the pandemic, I've been sharing this XPRIZE Pandemic and Alliance Task Force with over 100 companies and industries and startups and academics. Part of this future, again, is collaboration between all sorts of parties to solve for PPE and diagnostics and testing. And now we're kind of going to go beyond the pandemic to health and health span around the world. But we realize it's not just about technology. We know that our social determinants, your zip code, where you live, is more important than your genetic code. And we've seen the impact of social determinants in the United States. If you're African American or Latino, you've had a much higher risk of mortality and morbidity from COVID. So we need to pay attention to our social determinants. Some of those relate to our obesity epidemic, something that's very prevalent here in Mexico. And I'm a pediatrician. We can do small things that are not technical to change that. If you have a small baby at 6 months who starts their first food, don't give them the white rice, the white cereal. Give them the whole grain cereal. That changes their gut, their microbiome, and their risk of obesity and diabetes goes down dramatically over their health span. Simple interventions. So we need to pay attention to clean water, good food, education, vaccines, and of course, now our digital determinants. Do you have access to internet? Do you have access to good battery life? We need to solve for that one, all right? So think about the digital determinants of health as we go forward, and realize that half of the world, 50% of the world population, does not have regular internet access yet, but soon in the next 2 and 5 years, the entire world will have high-speed internet from satellites and beyond. So new markets are opening. So let's reimagine, of course. Companies like Uber reimagined driving. They were exponential companies. They didn't invent GPS, online maps, online payments. They connected the dots to change how we drive. And we've seen, even this one, Human Uber, developed in Japan, provides a way to attend events remotely using another person's body. It's surprisingly natural, says its inventor. So maybe next time you'll send your Human Uber. But we are in this era where we can press a button and get what we want, whether it's a doctor or a nurse or a medicine. Even Uber and Lyft are bringing healthcare to many parts of the world. And so change is coming. Big players like Amazon are bringing Amazon Care to all the states in America, so digital blended with physical. We've seen the examples of companies that have been disrupted. So no one wants to be the next Kodak or BlackBerry. You want to be Ubering yourself before you get Kodak'd into this new age. Okay, so let's go into 3 areas. Let's start with the important one, health and prevention, so we live long, healthy lives. We know that it's our behaviors and our bad behaviors that drive most of our chronic conditions. And now we can start to measure those conditions, right? We know the big challenges here with obesity. Actually, you have the #1 rate in the world. What if we can start to measure with simple technologies the things that contribute to obesity? It's only been, 13 years since the first Fitbit arrived? How many of you have a wearable on right now that tracks your health? Maybe half the room, right? Soon, everyone will have a wearable that can track and measure almost every element of our physiology and behavior. And these sensors are going beyond our wrist to sensors inside your medicine to track whether you took your pill. They're going into patches. They're going into even simple devices, like a simple Fitbit. When you send a patient home from a surgery, like a total hip replacement, are they walking more and doing better, or are they walking less? If they're walking less, maybe we need to intervene and do something to help them before they have a fall. So where we're going to shift is what's from quantified self, where many of us have our data stuck on our cell phones, to quantified health, where that data is going to flow to your doctor, to your nurse, to your hospital, to optimize your longevity, your health span, to pick up disease at stage 0, and then when you have a disease, whether it's diabetes, heart disease, cancer, to have much smarter feedback loops. So let me show you some examples of what's coming and what's next. There are now patches that you can wear that give you an intensive care unit level of data. It lasts for 30 days and gives you all sorts of information that can flow anywhere in the world. We're seeing now patches and watches that can measure blood pressure without a cuff. And soon they won't just measure blood pressure, they'll measure blood sugar continuously. We're going from wearables to insidables, technologies you can fit in a contact lens, or chips underneath your skin that can transmit your data 24/7, especially important for chronic disease management. We have shockables that can change your behavior, hearing devices that don't just play music but give you guidance, ringables. I mean, think about this little ring that I'm wearing. All the exponential technology on a ring that can give me tremendous insights to my sleep, which I haven't got a lot of this week. Sleep is so important to your health. If you do nothing else, measure your sleep and start to optimize that. And there's new ways to get sleep anywhere. But these rings can also start to determine who's pregnant 9 days before a pregnancy test, or can measure your response to a COVID vaccination and tell you how high your blood levels will be. So tremendous opportunities to leverage our wearable devices. Other things we can measure are breath, right? You might want to check your breath before you go on a social engagement, a breathable. But now these are like nano-noses. They can pick up the molecules of cancer or molecular diseases. I'm wearing, I won't show you, my underwearable. Little sensors that can go in your underwear. You get a pack of 10, and they can continuously measure my respiratory rate, my heart rate, my movement, my breathing, and those are starting to be paid for to do remote patient monitoring. Again, taking care from the hospital to the home to anywhere. And then, of course, we can start to measure our food, which is our most important medicine, right? We can measure our inputs, what's inside our food, how many calories. We can also start to measure our metabolomics. Our blood sugar can be measured, whether you're diabetic or not, with small, cheap sensors. And we can also start to measure our output. So we start to measure our input, our output, our metabolome. We're going to move to precision nutrition to really pick the right diet and things that optimize your health or can even manage and treat disease. Now, we're also entering an era where we don't need to have any wearable. We're in the era of invisibles. Our smart cameras now can measure our vital signs, our blood pressure, our oxygen saturation. So our environments are starting to measure our physiology. Voice is also a biomarker. Voice changes with changes in neurologic disease, mental health, or the sound of your cough. Is that a common cold? Is that croup, or might it be COVID? So voice is a biomarker. Wi-Fi has been modified by MIT engineers to measure the vital signs of 10 or more people in the same room. So whether we like it or not, our digital exhaust can be collected 24/7. We'll be always online with our digital health data. Who owns that data? Do you own that data? How does that data flow? Does your doctor want more data? What is it, doc? Just as I thought, you're generating too much data. We don't want the data, we want the insights. And we need to align that with the workflow of the overwhelmed doctor or nurse who often spends too much time processing data and less time making sense of it. So today, of course, we can now connect our data from our wearables, our scales, our glucometers, our homes on our Android apps. I can send my Fitbit data to my doctor at Stanford. But what does my doctor at Stanford do with my Fitbit data? We need to learn how this means in the real world. So Google's Verily is doing what's called the Baseline Project. 10,000 volunteers sharing their medical records, their digital exhaust, their genomics, so we can understand from this new information. We can build predictive maps. I like to call it predictalytics, integrating all sorts of information that is very personal to you and creating your own check engine light. Just like your car has hundreds of sensors, you don't care what the sensor is, you care when your check engine light goes on. And this is becoming reality. Your Fitbit can tell whether you have the flu or a cold, or even can detect who has COVID before they have any symptoms. So we're going to use these new elements as check engine lights for public health and personal health. But we may have all the information, all the data, but we often don't exercise enough or don't eat well. We know that behavior change is hard. So we're starting to see this digitization of personalized coaching from robotics and chatbots. We can make each of us more engaged in our health. The new drug is you, engaged as a patient, as a consumer. And that engagement can't be one size fits all. Depending on your age, culture, language, education, where you live, you need to have smart design thinking integrated into our care. You might want a smart avatar that relates exactly to you and your personality. You may want to use voice, whether you're 9 or 99. Anyone can use voice technologies. So imagine in the near future, we all have our personalized health coach that shows us in the mirror our personal health score. It doesn't just show us you of today, it shows you of tomorrow. You of tomorrow if you're working out, you doing your Peloton, or if you keep having donuts for breakfast, you of tomorrow, right? I can see myself now, and I can see myself 100 donuts later. I will have one donut. Or many of you or your friends might smoke. What happens if you can see you of today and you of smoking 5 years later? That might change your perception. Or if you spend too much time on social media, right? So we can use these new visions of the future, this new world of augmented, virtual, and extended reality in powerful ways in healthcare. These technologies are getting more invisible. They can allow a medical student, for example, to learn anatomy in new ways and blend learning in powerful modalities. They can enable a surgeon to bring complex information and blend that in the operating room or guide them step by step through certain surgeries and procedures. It can educate our children about their health, their bodies. When they can see a version of inside, they can spend a much better job later of exercise and nutrition. Here's my son Leo at 3 years of age, understanding his basic cardiac anatomy, and hopefully he will stay healthier, right? And I also love lessons from other fields using augmented reality. I've been a pilot and a flight surgeon with F-16 and F-15 squadrons. We use in the fighter planes heads-up display. We see data in synthesized ways. It can tell us if there's a bad guy shooting at us. It can tell us if we're about to hit a mountain. It gives us some extra warning. If we're about to hit that mountain, it gives us a clue. Pull up. It tells us to pull up. What if we use that same technology to see our food in one way and maybe in another way, and then a little hint. Pull up. So, changing behavior. And then, of course, there's virtual reality, right? It's fun to put grandma on a roller coaster, but virtual reality is not just for gaming now. Virtual reality is a therapy. It can treat pain patients. It can treat and be used for physical therapy to keep folks engaged in gamifying physical therapy. It can take a person who's in a hospital and scared and put them in a warm environment. We can even blend smell in virtual environments for everything from meditation and other forms of medication. And virtual reality is going to shift how we do education, right? I can learn my heart anatomy in new ways. I can walk inside the heart, or you can walk inside your own heart and understand its physiology and the effect of health and medication and treatment. And then this is how we used to train. We used to try and see what was happening. Now we can do virtualized education. I was in London 5 years ago for the first virtual reality surgery that was streamed to 2,000 medical students around the world. Or I can bring in an expert surgeon into Mexico City, or from Mexico City to rural Mexico, or from Paris to San Francisco to give guidance and help surgeons upskill themselves. In fact, part of this future is learning from others, even building video games for doctors and nurses. So instead of how I trained in medicine, see one, do one, teach one, the future is often going to be simulation. You'll go into the virtual operating room. You'll practice procedures. Just like a doctor flies a pilot will fly a flight simulator, doctors, nurses, and medical teams will simulate and learn in that form. And as we crowdsource knowledge, we'll be building a Waze for medicine. We'll be learning from thousands. So the average doctor will become a 99th percentile doctor. We'll be guided through procedures. Just like we have driver assist in Tesla, going all the way to full assist, we're going to see this emergence of robotic surgery even go fully autonomous, as was demonstrated at Johns Hopkins last month. What about the important field of diagnosis? We want to pick up disease early rather than late. Here's my brain. It came AI color-coded. I can check my brain health. I've even had my full body MRI done in 45 minutes for still expensive, $2,000 US. But soon these sorts of scanners will come to our corner pharmacy. You may have your whole body scanned in 5 minutes with an AI radiologist giving you the results. In fact, there are actually scanners now today that are portable and much less expensive. I had my own brain MRI'd while on a boat going down the Hudson River in New York in 5 minutes, plugged into the wall power. So these imaging technologies are getting more powerful and will democratize diagnostics. And I have many of these diagnostic tools in my pocket or in my desk at home. We have, the equivalent of a science fiction, medical tricorder, the technology that can give us all sorts of data pulled down from a single integrated device to augment our telemedicine. Or stethoscopes built with AI that can help me be a good cardiologist or interview to diagnose a heart murmur. Or now the era of AI-powered ultrasound devices. They used to be $200,000. Now they're $2,000 and can bring diagnostics anywhere in the world at low cost. And even the laboratory is getting low cost. We now have labs on a chip that can bring a laboratory to your pocket or to your smartphone. And so we have incredible power to bring new forms of digital tools from rural Africa to the Yucatan, to the Amazon, and that future is here today. We just need to connect the dots. I chaired the X Prize around fast, frequent, cheap, and easy testing. Make tests under $5, under 5 minutes. We had 700 teams compete, 9 incredible winners, which will bring not just better tools for diagnosing COVID, but other infectious and non-infectious diseases. Part of diagnostics is understanding our base genomics. The price of sequencing has dropped at twice the rate of Moore's law. In 10 years, it will be $10 US, or maybe even less. And we can use this genetic information to pick the right drugs and the right dosing. We can understand diseases like diabetes at their genetic level, so it's not just type 2 diabetes, it's a very specific subtype. And we're going from genome to multiome. It's not just our genome, it's our sociome, who we interact with, our exposome, where we've lived, our microbiome, the bugs in our gut playing an important role in obesity, mental health diseases, and beyond. So part of this future is multiomics, bringing and layering this information together to let us build our own personal digital twin, kind of like your own simulator for you or your community to better optimize health, diagnostics, and therapy. And of course, we need some help with all this data, not just AI, artificial intelligence. I like to call it IA, intelligence augmentation, which is already augmenting the radiologist, or the future of pathology is very digital. It could even help your gastroenterologist find a lesion they may have missed when they're doing the procedure, right? So AI is getting more and more powerful and bringing us tools to predict, not just react. Or creating new forms of drug discovery. AlphaFold and others are bringing AI to drug discovery. In fact, this company in silico used AI machine learning to discover a new drug and get it into clinical trials in just 18 months. So we're shifting how and where we do all sorts of things. So AI is not going to replace your doctor, your nurse, your pharmacist, but those who use AI collaboratively will replace those who do. Let me finish with therapy. So many new therapies, but vaccines still today require a needle and a syringe. Dean Kamen and others are creating patch-type vaccines that you can do yourself anywhere in the world. We're seeing the ability now to do our virtual visits. All of you have maybe had your first virtual visit during the pandemic. Now you might visit with your avatar of your doctor, and they may feel real. Just like we're entering the metaverse, we're going to have a new medverse as well, where much of our healthcare interactions will occur in this augmented virtual world. We're starting to prescribe not just drugs, but video games and apps. There's now hundreds of FDA-cleared apps that I can prescribe to you to treat everything from depression to smoking to cancer. And because there's so many of these today, I've been building a new platform called digital.health, You can try it out today where you can find a medical formulary. You might be looking for a new diagnostic device that can do an EKG from your pocket, and you might put that in your own personal digital formulary or enable a doctor or nurse to prescribe that device. Or you might have diabetes and be looking for new apps that can help you manage and reverse that with diet and coaching. So there's an explosion of these new tools. We need ways for our doctors, nurses, and healthcare systems to find them and prescribe them. And with my new venture fund, we're finding incredible new innovations that are really going to shift and bring digital and longevity together. I'll end with an example of 3D printing. We've seen 3D printing for braces, for medical implants. What if we could address the challenge of taking too many medications that aren't the right dose for you? What if we could replace the pill box with a medication that was built for you, that was intelligently designed, that was modified and adapted and made at home? So I've been developing a technology called telemedicine, where you can 3D print your own pill with your medicines for longevity or maybe for blood pressure or diabetes, and might start with a printer on your corner pharmacy, but eventually a printer in your home that will allow you to print, modify, and optimize your medications. So that's part of where this all comes together. Now, whether it's a new drug or a new app, we need to learn what works and bring that to the world more quickly. So that enables us all to be part of this future of discovery. You can all now join a virtual clinical trial. Clinical trials have moved from 10 years to 10 weeks because you can download the app, get the drug or the device delivered by mail. We can crowdsource this information because the future of medicine, I think, will be as different as how we've been driving. 15 years ago, many of us used to drive with paper maps. Remember paper maps? Now it would be hard to imagine driving without Waze or Google Maps. Imagine we had a Google Maps or Waze for our health, where we all shared some of our health information, but we got information back that was relevant to where we were and leveraged information from all of us. And so we can all think of ourselves not just as blood donors or organ donors, but as data donors. And we can all start to think convergently. These new ideas are not about any one technology, but how they come together, often in an exponential and surprising way. So as we look to the future and all the great ideas and people here, don't just imagine what's possible in 2022, but skate to where the puck will be in 2026 and 2032. And we all together have this opportunity to go from our past of sick care, one-size-fits-all, siloed, physical, to a future that's continuous, proactive, personalized, crowdsourced, and AI-enhanced to build a better system around the planet. So let's not take incremental steps, let's take exponential ones. The future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed, and it's up to you and all of us together not to just imagine the future of medicine, but boldly create that future together. So with that, muchas gracias, let's create the future. Thank you.